Maybe can you, thank you. Can you move over the on the right-hand side? It shows all the people in attendance.
Oh, uh, you want to remove that?
Okay, there we go. That's good enough. That's good enough. All
Uh,
righty. So we're going to talk a little bit about COVID, a spike protein in the long haul. People are sick all the time. It's unbelievable. It's just like it's never ending. And there's a lot of stuff that people don't realize about what has been going on since about 5 years ago that I wanted to share with you today. So we'll be talking about COVID, about spike protein, and the long haul. You know, they're long haulers, they call them. So let me go full screen to make it easier for you to see. There we go. So what is a virus? And this may be old information to some of you, but I hope it's new information to some people at least. So a virus is a submicroscopic infectious agent. So it's so tiny you can't see it in a microscope. It replicates only inside of living cells of an organism. So when you're alive, it multiplies. If you're not alive, it stops multiplying. It typically consists of a nucleic acid molecule in a protein coat. And that's the key right there, that protein coat. So it's too small to be seen by light microscopy. The protein coat is called fibrin. And I should have that more highlighted because I want you to remember that word fibrin because it will keep coming up and there's lots of things related to fibrin. So the process, when a cell is infected, a virus like the COVID, the COVID pathogen, it makes copies inside of the cell. And when the cell dies, it bursts. You just see it pop and it releases all these spike proteins into the blood cell. It's kind of like it literally is making babies inside of your cell that just pop out and they go and reinfect other cells. So these cells can also shed small packages of proteins and other materials like viral particles wrapped in a layer of cell membrane. Okay, so it's all inside of this layer. Either way, these mechanisms require a reservoir of the virus somewhere in the body. So understand that if you've had COVID or if you've had a vaccine, maybe, you can have a storage of this virus that is hiding somewhere in your body. So let's take a look at fibrin. Like I said, I want you to remember that because that is important. Viruses and bacteria are covered in fibrin. This is how they hide from the immune system to avoid being destroyed. So this is like a coat they put on that is made up of protein, and that protein is called fibrin. So when you take antibiotics or other immunosuppressant medications, anything that shuts down your immune system, including Tylenol and aspirin, okay? If you have a fever and you take Tylenol or aspirin and it takes the fever down, you're suppressing the immune system, okay? These viruses and bacteria do not leave the body, but go into hiding using fibrin. So they literally grow this fibrin around themselves to hide. Cancer cells are covered in fibrin, basically our fibrin, which is a thick outer coating designed to prevent your body's immune system from identifying and destroying the cancer cell. This fibrin defense keeps chemotherapy out of the cells unless high doses are used. Why they start off, if people have cancer, I don't know how many are aware of that. The first dose is a high dose because otherwise they cannot get to the cancer cells. So many people still have spike proteins in their blood long time after they have had COVID. If you take a look at the picture on this slide, the red coloring indicates the spike protein being developed. That's what it looks like if you look at it under a microscope. Okay, the spike protein is being developed. The circulating viral proteins could possibly help identify the cause of what they call long haulers symptoms. Other causes could include an overblown immune response that leads to COVID patients' body develop autoantibodies, which of course we start looking at autoimmune, right? That attack its own cells in the same way that they would attack an intruder, such as a virus or bacteria. So this is, a cell that looks like something already a normal part of the body, and your body is creating these auto antibodies to start attacking something that actually belongs to the body. And again, this is what we call autoimmune disease. Okay, these autoimmune or these autoantibodies have been found in people's body during an initial COVID infection, as well as in the bodies of some long COVID patients. So tissues like those are in the gut and in the brain could be a haven for the COVID within the body, preventing long COVID patients from fully clearing their infections and acting as a source of spike proteins. So again, see where it lands? Gut and brain. That's what they're suspecting, where the haven is for the spike protein. This hypothesis lines up with other evidence that COVID infects more parts of the body than just the lungs, including studies that have found the COVID in deceased patients' organs. Again, in the beginning it was the lungs, but now they have found that it is in different organs and in the brain and in the gut. Those are the two major ones, but it's found in all other organs. So it finds a host that it can live in. This is a big one because a lot of people struggle with lung problems, right? So fibrin and the lungs. Fibrosis, also known as fibrotic scarring, is a form of wound healing in which connective tissue replaces normal tissue to the extent that it goes unchecked. And it leads to considerable tissue remodeling and the formation of permanent scar tissue. Of course, we've all seen scars. You've had surgery, you've had a cut, you can develop scar tissue. Okay? Scar tissue, though, does not have circulation. These are dead cells. It creates a breeding ground for disease. I will never forget, I had a lady in my office a number of years ago who had undergone a year of chemo because they told her that she had cancer in her kidney. It never went away. She got sicker and sicker. Eventually, they opened her up and found out that the spot they thought was cancer was actually scar tissue from an antibiotic. The lady was African American. They are prone to scarring. And after they did all that, she grew more scar tissue from that kidney to the other kidney and shut down the second kidney, all for no reason at all because they thought she had cancer due to that scar tissue. So keep in mind that whenever you take an antibiotic, you shut down the immune system, okay? So the formation, fibrin is also formed in response to injuries, healing wounds, and we just talked about that. Blood clots can also be fibrin and actually can be accelerated if you have a high sugar diet. So the key here is that fibrin is a protein. Keep that in mind. Fibrin is a protein. Spike protein is a protein that does not belong. All looking at protein. I injected this slide here because this is important. Touchstone's green energy also contains serrapeptidase, and that may help prevent bacteria from creating this protective biofilm around themselves. Look at this. What a miracle product this is. If you are on the green energy, the body cannot create the fibrin, thus supporting an overall treatment strategy for infections. Clotting, we just said that fibrin can be blood clots. Serrapeptidase may help with blood clots by breaking down tissue and fibrin. Respiratory issues, back to COVID and respiratory issues, right? In a small clinical study, serrapeptidase helped patients with chronic airway diseases. Researchers found that serrapeptidase helped lower the frequency of coughing, decrease the amount of sputum that they coughed up. And in the study, serrapeptidase also helped decrease the viscosity, elasticity, and the presence of solid components in their secretions. So it breaks it all down where it comes out easier. And I thought, everybody talks about nattokinase, but research shows that when you combine nattokinase and serrapeptidase, this is in the clinical studies, the nattokinase is more effective. It works better in combination. So that's why this is such a great product. So some of the long haul symptoms are chest pains, rapid heart rate, rashes, feelings of pins and needles, migraines, brain fog, generally reported 3 months after infection. The brain fog is a shortness of breath, nausea, respiratory diseases, autoimmune diseases, and the list goes on. It just continues to go on and on. What about research? Researchers reported detecting a fragment of the COVID in blood samples from long COVID sufferers up to a year after their original infection. The fragment is the spike protein, one of the protrusions around the outside of the SARS-CoV that gives the coronavirus its namesake corona, or crown-like appearance. And you kind of see that in the picture. It kind of has a crown-like appearance. There was a clinical study that was done using blood plasma from 36 long haulers versus 26 recovered patients. Samples were taken 2 or 3 more times over a year. They found intact spike protein in the long haulers group. The intact spike protein found in patients' blood could indicate that infected cells missed by the immune system are to blame for long COVID. So the immune system of these people wasn't working and missed these infected cells. And here is my question. Why did the immune system miss those infected cells? There's got to be a reason, right? And what can we do about it? Another possibility is that COVID infection makes people more susceptible to other viruses already present in the body, such as Epstein-Barr. This pathogen lies dormant in most people and has been found to be reactivated in some of the long COVID patients. The intact spike protein signal was only observed in samples from people who were diagnosed with long COVID 2 to 12 months after getting sick with COVID, but not in patients who only experienced an initial infection. So the finding hints that the spike protein found in the blood could be a biomarker specifically for long COVID, right? Because the people that had COVID for a short period of time did not have this. Only people who had it after a long period of time. So that definitely should be a biomarker. COVID spike proteins can cause significant damage to cell membranes lining blood vessels, leading to a dangerous syndrome known as vascular leak. I wanted to bring this up because I have seen this in people that the blood vessels are leaking fluid. Okay, that's a dangerous situation. It increases the permeability of blood vessels, allowing fluids to leak out, which causes damage that can lead to serious heart as well as respiratory problems. I recently had somebody in my office who had this very situation. I hadn't seen him in a number of years. He kind of strayed away. He had COVID, been really sick. By the time he walked in my office, I sent him to the emergency room. No, that's not something I've ever done before in all my almost 40 years of practice. But I sensed an urgency. I took eye pictures, saw the heart problems, saw the lung problems, saw the kidney problems. And to make a long story short, he was in heart and kidney failure, both. He is now going to the hospital 3 times a week to get dialysis, and we are working on the heart situation, hoping to reverse it all. But this is a typical situation that comes from long COVID. It is nothing to fool around with. We got to take action. We got to help these people. Spike proteins make way for the COVID virus to enter cells and infect the host. And previous data show that high levels of circulating spike proteins correlate with the severity of the infection. So researchers have found that blocking spike protein damage may help to mitigate deadly complications such as, and here it is, pulmonary edema, that's what this gentleman had, and respiratory failure in COVID patients. Pulmonary edema is basically congestive heart failure. I kind of put it in the same category because there's fluid around the lungs when you have congestive heart failure. Why is there fluid around the lungs? Because the kidneys can't pull the fluid away. So it's a vicious cycle that people end up with this situation. I'm going to go a step further, go and talk about something you may not have heard of. It's called galactin-3. So this lectin has quite a harmful effect on at least 3 major stages of the COVID disease process. First of all, a key function in the spike protein of SARS has been shown to bind a specific acid. Okay, so it binds to a specific acid which is a process that may be necessary for the virus to enter the cell. So it's looking for a way to get into the cell by binding to this acid. Okay, this acid binding function shares striking structural similarities, sequence and functional similarities with the human galectin-3 protein. Okay, don't get overwhelmed. This is not anything that I'm going to go into much further, but I just want you to be familiar with the galectin-3 protein. Okay. Second, a major cause of death in COVID is a direct result of dysregulated immune activation. Okay. The immune system gets messed up. Bottom line, follow a SARS infection and results in major inflammation. Galectin-3 demonstrates to be a strong indicator in predicting severity and complications in COVID. Okay, so you see that they can actually test for this protein. The regular lab doesn't. There are special labs in the country that will test for galectin-3, and that is definitely an indicator for the complications in COVID. Serious high levels of galectin-3 were found in people with serious COVID versus people with mild COVID. Galectin-3 plays a key role in driving the deadly inflammatory formation of, here it is, fibrin, that protein again, and organ damage common in COVID mortality. You'll know all about fibrin when we're done here. So galectin-3, here it is, shares close structural similarities with the COVID viral spike proteins. They are very similar. Due to the structural similarities, researchers continue to suggest that galectin-3 blockers can also bind and block COVID spike proteins. I will tell you right now that when people come to me with a severe case, I deal with this like I do cancer. Bottom line, because what is fibrin? Cancer cells have fibrin. Okay, this can turn into cancer, as we have seen already that cancer is on a rise like never before in history. Okay, the galectin-3 connection. Galectin-3 is commonly overexpressed by cancer cells and promotes cancer development and metastasis. I have kind of, what do you call it? Did capital letters here because this is so, I have been researching this for so long. This is just so important and people just don't know because nobody talks about this. Okay. Over the past few years, evidence has emerged that galectin-3 is also overexpressed in several metabolic malfunction conditions such as diabetes, obesity, and atherosclerosis, and is also involved in the regulation and the occurrence and the development of these diseases. Again, galectin-3 is a protein similar to fibrin. Now, there's hope. There's hope. There is green energy to the rescue. Okay, it is organic, whole food, non-GMO, in glass bottles, and quality assurance internationally certified, which is better than a regular American organic certification. This has been physically inspected for purity. They cannot just get an organic certification to get QAI. It is physically inspected. The glass bottles, one of the big things that you find in the news these days is plastics, microplastics in your brain, in your arteries, in your gut, in your lungs. They find microplastics everywhere, and so many supplements are in plastic bottles. So that is something I am seriously trying to avoid when I work with people. 99% of all my products are organic and in glass bottles. Okay, so that's very important to keep that in mind. We don't need to add more debris as we are trying to clean out this fibrin, this additional protein. Galectin-3 is also increased in the presence of excess toxins. It also increases inflammation. And inflammation is at the root of all disease. And I always say, is inflammation at the root, or are the toxins at the root? And here you are. It's increased in the presence of excess toxins. So people are so toxic that causes inflammation, which that causes all disease. Is it now important to reduce inflammation or reduce the cause of inflammation? Again, the toxins. So I don't know how many people use BTA machines, biological terrain assessment, where you run urine and saliva, and you can see if the body can eliminate toxins or not. If the body is so congested, it can't even get the toxins out. You see it when you take those people that do iridology. I'm sure you see the toxins. I have taken herbal cleanses for 30 years and never cleared up my eyes until a couple of years ago after I got on these touchstone products. I, for the first time in my life, have clean blue eyes. It's like I had to take pictures of my own eyes and look in a mirror time and time again because it was exciting. So let's change the environment. Some of you have probably heard the saying, when you're green inside, you're clean inside. pH is important. If you have a healthy pH, hard for disease to live. Resistivity is the ability of the body to transport nutrients to the cell and to transport waste out of the body. It's a transportation department. And the redox, okay? Your minerals are important in the body because why? They produce energy in the body. So I love the 9-in-1 super green juice that gives us vitamins and minerals that help us to alkalize, that help us to detox, that give us fiber, that gives us natural energy, probiotics and prebiotics. It builds your immunity. It has antioxidants, and it contains digestive enzymes. It's an all-in-one healthy food to start changing that internal environment. And what else changes that internal environment? Yes, your Pure Body Extra and your fulvic. Why? The zeolite not only can help capture the debris from the virus and the spike proteins and the galactin-3 when we take the green energy, but it changes the environment. It removes toxins from the body. When I start to feel like I start to come down with something, I probably take the Pure Body Extra uh 20 times a day. Every time I grab that bottle. Why? Because I got to change that environment. I got to capture the invaders and anything that comes in that does not belong. I've got to have a healthy gut, and the fulvic is incredible for that. So with auto ship, that package there is 109, and then the green energy with auto ship is 36.95, and it contains the high doses of the nattokinase blend, which is 100 milligrams, as well as the serrapeptidase. Here is your combination for a perfect protocol. What do we do? We have to isolate and destroy the spike proteins as well as the galactin-3. Encapsulate it to render it powerless, break down and destroy. Boy, we're going to war here. Optimize your immune response for removal of debris, detoxification. I always say, and people argue with me, especially on Facebook, they think they know something. Some people do anyway. You know, you can only get sick if your body is a host. I lived in Mississippi and in Florida, and I never had roaches in my house, but knew plenty of people that did. Why? They didn't keep a clean house. So we got to take care of our house. And I think that was the last slide, and I hope you enjoyed that. And I don't know if there's any time left for questions.
Yes, Dr. Wetzel, there was a question came in the chat. Let's see, let me get back to that. Marcia asked, can vascular leak present as unexplained bruising on arms and legs?
I could see that absolutely, because they're weak blood vessels, yes, and you can leak blood. Yes, certainly.
Okay, and she also asked, is fibrin around parasites?
That's an interesting question, but they could be part of parasites. I can't say that they